On no fewer than 6 occasions, the whole project was abandoned. I was told, I don't know if you can see how far it is, in 11th of January 1985, John Blackville will confirm that what I was doing was absolutely fine. Peter Gross told me to keep writing. A few days later, 3 months later, sorry, in November 1985, the deluxe edition was abandoned. And then a little later after that, a few days later, Seckers abandoned the whole thing. Harcourt Brace then took it over in New York. They abandoned it in February 1986, and then in summer 1986, they abandoned an 11-volume edition, substituted first an archive edition, and then a 5th supplementary volume. In December 1987, I was given a contract by Seckers. In 1989, notice the gap of 3 years, Harcourt Brace, having already abandoned the edition, wrote to say they'd again abandoned it. In August 1992, Harcourt Brace resuscitated the edition and said they would take it over. By then, we sent 8,000 pages of copy to New York. In the summer of 1993, I was given a contract to produce the edition, $5,000, half payable on signature. 3,188 pages were set in New York, again proofread by Ian Shield and me. December that same year, Harcourt Brace abandoned it for the last time, and I'm still waiting for a second $2,500. In December 1995, I had a sextuple heart bypass, hardly surprising after all this. Gradually, the whole thing was put together, and in February 1997, it was finally decided that we should have an index, and I was asked to produce it. In March 1997, Random House took over Seck and Wahlberg, and in the course of transferring the material, all the photographic material was lost. Fortunately, I had copies. In 11th of August 1997, publication was scheduled, and Bertelsmann took over, and publication was delayed for a year. So the 20 volumes, plus the facsimile and the Lost Orwell, take up about 3 foot of shelf space. And since then, I've produced 4 Penguin collections. When we found some new materials, including the very interesting letters that Eileen wrote to her Oxford friend Nora, Random House was not interested in publishing these, and they were taken over by the Time Lord Press and published as the Lost Orwell, and I'm very grateful to Andreas Kampermar for that. There are things missing still. There are letters to Brenda Salkeld, which have been summarised by Gordon Barker. Letters to Eleanor Jakes, which have been offered for sale, but have, by Bonhams, but then withdrawn in mysterious circumstances. There are 1 or 2 Spanish diaries that were seized from Eileen's room in Barcelona, and we know they're in the NKVD archive, but we can't get hold of them. Emma Larkin says that there are letters written by Orwell when a police officer in Bern. They're only sort of official letters, but it would be interesting to see them. And we still can't find, and I don't think we will find, Orwell's voice on any recordings. And now, perhaps what I've foolishly called the autobiography Orwell didn't write, the diaries and the life and letters. Those are the Penguin books, the life and letters Orwell will be published in January. I'd like to conclude by saying a few words about Jacinta, the little girl to whom Orwell read Pig in the Band. Orwell, as Eric Blair, had been a childhood friend of Jacinta Buddicombe. They shared much, writing poems to each other, writing to a friend. Jacinta writing to a friend who was expecting an illegitimate child, said that just before leaving for Burma, Eric, as she of course always called him, had ruined what had been a close and fulfilling relationship since childhood by trying to take us the whole way before I was anywhere near ready for that. Orwell, Eric, went to Burma, brought back an engagement ring which he wanted to offer Jacinta and persuade her to marry him. She refused point blank to see him. Orwell thought that was simply because she still held a grudge against him for attempting to push her too far 5 years earlier. In fact, she herself had just given birth to an illegitimate child and couldn't bear to tell him. This picture, taken by a street photographer, hence its rather black and whitewashed look, in 1927, shows her on the right leaving the solicitor's office after handing over her illegitimate child for adoption by an uncle and aunt shortly after Orwell's return. The child, the girl, Nicola, died in a car crash in Canada in 1997. The publishers didn't want to include it. It was not of artistic enough quality, but it seems to me very evocative. This is what Jacinta wrote to a friend in 1972. How I wish I had been ready for betrothal when Eric asked me to marry him on his return from Burma. It took me literally years to realise that we are all imperfect creatures, but that Eric was less imperfect than anyone else I ever met. Jacinta did not know that Eric was Orwell until about a year before he died, and they exchanged a few letters therein, a life of letters, of course. As I said earlier, this project has been entirely self-financed, I think from Quangos and universities and grants of any kind. Ian, my wife and I have paid all our own expenses. I'm sometimes said to have battened on Orwell and earned large sums as a result. And so if I may, I think this will be my last lecture ever anywhere, my earnings over the last 29 years for these 29 books have come to less than I received for editing the first part of Henry IV for the Penguin Shakespeare in 1968. In financial terms, it might not seem a great deal compared with what is paid to celebs. But I have no doubt that, despite all the problems, the labour and the anxieties, not to mention the sufferings of my wife and family, it has been wonderfully rewarding. People say Orwell didn't smile. There it is. Thank you very much.